Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the Women on Top podcast. I'm your host, Valerie Lynn, and with over 15 years of business experience, I became truly passionate about finding ways to support and hear from way more women. And what we know to be true is that women thrive when they are in their favorite position, on top in business, in relationships, in personal growth, and on top in being real and authentic to who the hell they are. So I invite you to sit back and enjoy the Women on Top podcast. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Women on Top. And today I am so humbled and thrilled to be joined by Megan Febuary. So glad to have her with us. And she is a trauma-informed writing coach. She's also an amazing author and founder of For Women Who Roar. She's dedicated her life entirely to really helping women write these stories that they've been afraid to tell. And she does this really uniquely by helping them use their body, their voice, and kind of these pages as tools for a method of healing. And I'm just really excited to have her dive into this process that she uses and help us kind of all learn a little bit about the stories that live inside of our bodies. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here today, Megan. And I'm just really glad to have you.
Thanks, Valerie. I'm
Yeah.
super jazzed, and I just love talking about the power of story and writing and healing. So this is wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. It's something that speaks to me. I have always written and like journaled ever since I can remember. I feel like I've just always had a notepad and I'm just kind of always writing. And
Mhm.
so I'm curious for you, was there kind of a moment for you when you realized that your story or your truth could actually heal and
Mm.
not just you, but help heal others too?
Yeah, I'd say for that question, it was later on. I mostly used it as a kind of personal healing process. There was never, when I was younger, a thought about how that might translate
Mm,
over into supporting other people. It was just like a lifeline for me to discover my truth and to help process all the things I was going through on the page, when I didn't feel like I could do that anywhere else. I'm trying to think when that was. It probably wasn't until I'd say graduate school.
mm,
So I was late. I was in my 30s, or almost in my 30s by that point, and that's when I had started studying about the body as a storyteller and really looking into this work of, you know, story work and narrative therapy and all that kind of good stuff. And thinking, wow, what if this way that I always, look to healing myself through creativity and arts and writing and poetry and all these things, what if I did that instead of, like, I didn't want to go the normal like therapy route that wasn't really landing with me. I was like, what if I created a different type of experience? And so I began to move into that, but it took a lot of different forms before it took on the form of writing coaching and all these things. It took a form of, creating a literary magazine or creative coaching, which I love too. Um yeah, various forms, but it wasn't in this way until then. And I think I'm trying to think of that moment of, like, what it was, the aha. I think people just started coming to me and asking
mm.
me about my journey, and then as I was doing that research, I started kind of seeing, what if this was a way we could turn this into something for others.
How does it heal? Like just kind of at a high level. I know there's so much there, but from your perspective, how is it helping women heal?
Yeah, well, I like to describe writing, especially when we're writing trauma or writing hard, tender material, as gathering pieces of your life, gathering puzzle pieces.
Mm,
So a lot of us have these fragments of our journey just scattered about, and we might not identify it like that, but we might have this sense of feeling discontent or this sense of, I don't feel whole. And so much of the work with writing, journaling, whether you're putting it together in some book experience or whether it's a reflection listening process for your life, when we begin to gather those pieces and note the themes, note the patterns that have occurred over time, and begin to retranslate it as an adult, as someone who has been through and survived to the other side of it, we're able to really enter into an advocacy space with our voice by using the writing as a way to go, this happened. Here I am. I'm still here. And a way of kind of retranslating experiences, not changing the experiences, but changing, the meaning of how we understand them and how we have moved beyond them through the writing.
Yeah. I feel like it is such a great way to kind of learn our own voice in a way. I'm wondering for the person who's listening to this, and I'm thinking of myself too, where they're maybe thinking, like, gosh, but I'm not a writer, right? Like, gosh,
Yeah.
but I couldn't dedicate my that much time. I don't have that much time, or I just don't associate with being writer. What what have you found there? And like what would you say to that woman?
Oh my gosh, I love that question so much. Well, this book definitely isn't just for writers. It's for anyone that has a body that has lived and experienced the good, the bad, the ugly of life. And um, it's a matter of reflecting. And yeah, there's a great book by Parker Palmer. It says, Let Your Life Speak. And so for me, it's learning to listen to your life, through the pages that we put down. And so often, and Joan Didion said this, and authors said this as well, that, I don't know what I think until I write it down. And
Hmm.
so often we're kind of scrambling and busy and moving from one thing to another, whether that is a kind of form of dissociation that we're just juggling through things, or
Mhm.
maybe it's just how we process or whatever or move through life. But when we allow ourselves to slow down and really pay attention and gather the pieces, then we can really start to I don't know, note things that are shifting and changing, and how we can yeah, evolve beyond that place.
Yeah. I love what you said there. And tell us a little bit about the book. So if you could
Oh,
explain a
sure.
little bit about the book, how this came to you and what it's really designed to do.
Yeah. So here's the book. If you're
Yes.
seeing this,
So beautiful.
thank you
By
so
the
much.
way.
I love the color turquoise, so I was really excited when I saw the design. Brave the Page, How Writing Our Hard Stories Brings Healing and Wholeness. I mean, the title itself kind of gives it away, right? But the book is it's split up into smaller chapters, and each chapter begins with a personal essay about my experience with whatever the topic might be. And then it moves into this kind of therapeutic self help guide. I like to describe it as a memoir meets masterclass on writing to heal.
Mm.
And so so it goes into that and breaking down the therapeutic like perspectives around each of it. And then it ends with a writing prompt and an affirmation at the end of each chapter. And
Mm.
overall, the book is moving through 3 different foundational, aspects of trauma healing, which is, the first part is, choice, the second part is safety, and the third part is resilience. And so the book is broken up into those 3 categories, and it goes through and teaches about, the importance of creative consensuality, the importance of setting boundaries in with our voice, the importance of saying yes and no. It talks about the power of writing things down. It talks about trauma response, how that shows up even in our writing when we show up to the work and to the page. Um, Talks about the fear of being seen, the common question that so many women really run into of, am I too much here? Am I not enough? It goes on and on. I mean, there's so many critical questions. It talks about, the retaliation factor of like, can I speak my truth? Am I allowed to say this? What does it mean to be a truth teller? All these aspects that so many of us are running into all the time, whether we're writers or not. Maybe we're just trying to stand up for ourselves, or, you know, stepping into a deeper truth for ourselves, and that fear of what it might mean to be that
Yeah.
bold woman.
Yeah. Gosh. I mean, we all, on some level, I feel like need this
Mhm.
just to really get to know ourselves in that way
Oh,
and just
yeah.
discover what's inside. How did
Mhm.
you come up with these pillars that it was choice and what were the other
Safety
two? Safety.
and resilience.
Okay. How
Yeah.
did how did you land on those?
Yeah, so in trauma-informed care overall, there's some really key pillars. Um, in addition to those, like the empowerment, embodiment is a common one, community. Um, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I might be missing some, but it's pretty much you like focuses around those pillars. And then I just picked these to really focus the energy around the structure of the book. Um, and specifically ordering it in that way because when we start to write and enter into any creative work, the thing I always encourage folks to start with is that reminder that they have choice, that they don't have to write this certain thing. They get to make the decision. Or if they're feeling too overloaded or overwhelmed, they have the choice to slow down, to pace themselves, to pause, to kind of reframe that sense of like, I have to hustle through this. I can't take my time. I need to, you know, get through this process as quickly as possible. Really letting choice be the key focus because it is so helpful to avoid like creative burnout, getting overwhelmed, triggered. If we keep choice and that kind of advocacy right at the forefront, it's everything. And then safety is, it's making sure you have safe practices, grounding practices, embodied practices when you're sitting down to write tender material, or say you're going to therapy and, you're processing it through journaling after. What are your grounding techniques? They can be very simple, just like three-part breathing, or
Yeah.
counting down from 10, whatever it might be, but something to settle into your body before and after. And then obviously resilience is kind of that result of those two. It's what you continue to become as you put in the practice of that advocacy and that safety in choice and yeah,
Yeah.
safe care.
That structure makes so much sense,
Hmm.
especially for I guess for me, it just speaks to me as a woman, and I
Hmm.
love that component of choice. Like, that was not kind of how I was thinking of it, so I really like how you
Mm.
added that in.
Ooh, what were
I'm
you
one
thinking?
I I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking about choice in such a it made me think about mindfulness of, like,
Oh.
it's a way of controlling my mind to decide what I'm doing with
Mm,
intention instead of just like, are you making the right or the wrong choice? And so that
mhm,
was kind of how initially I was thinking of it, was very black and white
yes.
and literal. And what ended up coming to me was like, gosh, this is actually like, I don't know, having like agency over my life in a way. And that's so important when you're
Yeah,
going through a process like this.
100%, and actually it's a great word to be thinking about because this book is really about, agency over your story, and when I say story, it's kind of combining a collection of stories. We're all made up of a mosaic of stories from throughout our lives, and often what happens is we're living under these kind of origin stories, these patterns, these belief systems that were kind of handed down to us, these narratives that were kind of, just
Right.
offered to us and we just absorbed them. And so much of the healing work and stepping into our just truest self is about deconstructing that to find who we are. And writing really helps us get there, to the nitty gritty of removing the mask and the layers of who who was I growing up and who is that really me?
Mhm.
And using that writing process as a way to reflect back like a mirror. I describe writing as a mirror, right? It's like mirror work because you see yourself on the page and see how honest can I get here, and then you read it back to yourself and like, oh my god, I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't know this was so true for me until I saw it
Right.
here.
I love the mirror analogy. And I was just thinking about how you talk sometimes about this concept generally of the body as a storyteller. And so, when was a time for you where your body could speak kind of before the words
Hmm.
were there?
Hmm.
And if you could just take us back to that time, and what was that like?
I mean, there's a million stories that belong to that question. So I'll speak to this one first. But the very first story mentioned in the book is in the introduction called "Hello Body," and it's around a childhood disease that I had when I was little called scleroderma. It's a very rare disease, and it exists in adulthood too. Uh, Unfortunately, for some, it's very tragic disease. And for children, if they get it, it affects usually the outer skin called morphia, and so it creates discoloration and it can be hardening of the tissues underneath the skin. So I was diagnosed with that. The beginning of the book, I talk about how I really began to process and investigate that illness and other illnesses that I had, like, Graves' disease, where it affected my thyroid, um, different type of stress responses that were, impacting my nervous system. And, I began to dig in and think, what could the stories behind these illnesses be? And so the scleroderma one, for example, gave, um, gave her mate. I think that's his name. I'm like totally blanking the doctor. He spoke to this illness, and I remember studying some of his work around it and talked about how it was creating a civil war in a person's body, with stress that was repressed and trauma that was repressed. And if you think about what scleroderma specifically was, it's about creating kind of this armor of tissue like around you, it's hardening. And so for me, as a childhood sexual um, assault survivor, uh, it makes sense, like, hiding so much about what had happened to me, um, like, creating this kind of, like, shelter within myself to tuck myself in. It's almost like my body responded, um, in a kind of protective reaction to what happened to me, and not to say everyone that goes through that develops, this disease or develops a disease of some sort, but I do find it really interesting that so much of the themes around my response to that illness were all around hiding and repression and fear. And that illness in itself, that disease, really spoke to that too through that kind of protective layer that it was creating, literally within and around my body. So it really got me thinking about what could be the connections across the board, and same with like thyroid disease, right? The impact of voice repression, what was going on there, you know, what what was this kind of not being able to speak truth? How could that have impacted, it goes on and on. But yeah, I really got to think about, what if our bodies are holding stories within? What if they are, as Carolyn Miss describes, history keepers, historians, right, of our past? And I think that could be really true. And so, one of the things I really prompt folks to consider is the story of their bodies. And so, when people come to me and they're like, I don't know where to start, whether it's they're writing a book or whether they're looking to heal their story through this process, I say start with the body, start with your
Yeah.
childhood. And it's
Gosh.
a really powerful place to begin.
Yeah. I am just, kind of absorbing what you shared about your own personal stories. And of course, it got me thinking of my own. And it's like, gosh, what a
Mhm,
journey we could go on just to
mhm,
start to unravel that. Was writing for you, given some of what you've been through, kind of like I don't know, like I'm seeing it as like this saving grace,
mhm.
and like a lifeline for you. Is
Yeah,
that true?
yeah, yeah. I like to describe it as, a deep dive. It's like where I go deep, deep into the water, searching for like hidden treasures. Um, I think with that description, I could also describe it as a womb. It's always held me, and um, felt like just the warmest, safest place to exist. Even when entering into all the hard work of writing, you know, fractured memory, or, writing the various parts of my life and pieces of me, gathering all of this mess, and this tragedy, and bringing it together. It's very painful, but it also felt safe because it was where I could just be without anyone, interfering and literally daring myself to be as honest as I could be on the page and seeing could I survive this? Could I survive this honesty and this truth? Can I what will it teach me? What will it reveal to me? And it always does. It always did, continues to. Even days like I've been writing forever and I'll show up and I'll be like, "Oh man, there's nothing new to say, blah 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 whatever." And I'll just be talking about like coffee and how boring life is or whatever. And then all of a sudden something just reveals itself to me through the writing, through the expression. I just realized, oh man, I didn't realize I felt like this today, or this emotion crept up, or this theme of repetition that I'm noticing as I'm journaling here. It's a great revealer. The
Yes.
page, yes.
So, is that your practice that you just go into it and just write no matter what it is? Like, I'm just going to
Yeah.
write about, even if I don't feel like I have anything to say, because that is often what I feel like I experience. I had started thinking I might want to write a book at some point. So
Hmm.
I
Okay.
start writing and then I felt like I got blocked. Like, oh, I don't remember what I want to share about this story, or just don't feel like I have anything to share. So I'm curious what your process is here where it starts revealing itself to you.
Okay, so I think there's two things that are really important about that question. The first is in terms of just showing up. I don't believe in writer's block. I believe it's always, I think we always have words. We always have things to say. It's really about the willingness to show up and be open to the blankness, the pause, the imperfection, the fear of not enoughness, right? Um, all of that is the invitation there. So if you're showing up and you're like, I don't know what to write about today, whether this is content for a book or whether it is for just in life general, you can start with a prompt of some sort that can always be helpful to generate, or you can just literally start with just the rambling of thoughts, which is what Julia Cameron, talks about with the morning pages. If you just write down whatever comes to mind. And it usually it's just total rambling. Like I did morning pages I try to do it as often as I can, but I remember for a while I was doing morning pages and I was sitting in the same chair in the living room, and there was a spider web that was outside of the window and it was all these spiders. And every day that I went there, I that's the only thing I could write about was the spider and the spider web. And so like for like 50 days, like literally all of my morning pages were basically a conversation with a spider and asking questions to spiders. It was really weird, but it was so funny.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Well, it was very playful and very interesting, and I had to look and go, I kind of love this too because I'm not showing up and going, well, I better talk about something very enlightening that I can share on my Substack or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like it just was about a spider. And it started birthing like an idea for a children's book and like, other really deep metaphorical thinkings about webbing and layers and all this kind of stuff. But I think we just have to show up and let ourselves be surprised. But I think what really happens is we show up and we're terrified of the not knowing. It's like
Mm,
losing control. Like we want the control all the time. And when we show up to the blank page and we don't know what's going to happen, we're scared of where it's going to take us, and we call it writer's block. But, I think we're really on the verge of an awakening if we show up to it and let our words speak to us and vice versa and open ourselves up to the conversation.
yeah, that's a interesting way to look at it. And it challenges me to want
Mhm.
to start doing something like that because I think I'm so type A that I'm like almost trying to check a box a lot of the time of like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to put in however many words to this book and then I'm going to
Mm.
feel like I'm accomplishing something because I can see the manuscript getting bigger
Yeah.
versus I'm just going to show up and write whatever comes to mind.
Now, I will say, in regard to working on a specific project, it is a little different because I imagine if you're working on a book, you would like to finish this thing. You would, you
Yeah.
do have a goal of it being about a specific topic. You want it to be complete. You want to share it with the world, I'm imagining. So if that's the case, what I do encourage folks to do around that, instead of the kind of just showing up and not knowing what's going to happen, is do that piece beforehand, the kind of just scattered random thinking, even if it's just 5 minutes. I'll do this with writing groups before we have writing sessions. It's like, okay, just write whatever's top of mind for you, and just get it all out of your head for the next 5 minutes. And it might just be like, oh man, life sucks right now. This coffee tastes bad. Oh, I need to wash my hair. I don't have time. I don't know. It
Yeah.
might just be all that, but it gets all that kind of busyness out of there. And then I invite them to think about, okay, now I want you to think about your book, this project you're working on, and what do you want to focus on today? Pick like one thing you really want to focus on, and they might say, oh, I want to read the last chapter that I wrote and then try to write the beginning of the next one, or I want to focus on editing the last chapter, whatever it might be. So with that in mind, that's what I would say in terms of, keeping that movement forward, because you could
Hmm.
easily collect words, but you might be writing about spiders in the middle of a romance novel, and it's just not going anywhere. Like, right? I don't
Right.
know. I want you to finish it, so it'll make you feel really good and proud of yourself. So, yes, but having a bit of format and containment there within your writing project is really important, and it'll make you feel really safe within the writing context too.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely makes sense. They're two separate things, but also connected in the sense that I think it might help clear some of the cobwebs that, live up there and to help get a little clarity on what's next or how I
Yes.
want to take the direction of it. It's vulnerable to put your story on the page. And so, your title is
Mm.
so aptly named, Brave the Page. And it causes me to wonder for you, was there somebody that kind of gave you permission to share your voice when you were starting to do this? Or did you just unravel your own voice and your own words? Or, sometimes I just feel like I've had people in my life that have helped, yeah, be a permission slip, I guess. And so I'm wondering if
Mm.
somebody did that for you.
Yeah, I think there's this part of the book where I talk about the importance of a good witness, right? A word witness. And a lot of times in our life, we have good witnesses and bad witnesses. One of the word witnesses that I had that was a benefit to me was when I was in middle school. I was an English teacher, and I had left my journal in the classroom by accident. It was filled with poetry. It was full of poetry. I still have all of it. And and I left it there and I was freaking out, just running around the school like, "Oh my god, where's my poetry?" And I retraced my steps and went back there, and the teacher had the poetry book, and she was like, "Megan, is this yours?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she like held it for a little while and was like, "My book." And she was like, "Well," she's like, I read, some of this trying to figure out who it was, and you write really beautifully, you're a lovely writer." And I was like, "Thank you," but also kinda pissed that she had read my work. And but she said, "But I also noticed, this was pretty dark. Like, you wrote about some really painful things and some things that made me concerned. Like, are you okay?" And, I totally lied and just like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm totally fine. I'm just weird." Whatever kids say. And, but I remember leaving that moment, and she probably would never know, but the impact that had on me of her encouraging me, and my writing was really powerful at that age, but also even more so saying, "I see you." I see something here, that doesn't show up on your external expression and who you are on the outside. I see something deeper and darker and sad. Are you okay? Are you okay? And that question of "Are you okay?" is really that important work in story healing, whether it's somebody asking us or whether we're asking ourselves as we reflect on our life is, "Are we okay? Am I okay? Are you okay?" As we read your Tinder story and you share something beautiful and raw, and it's inspiring to you and to us. So she's one good witness. And I'd say later on, with different therapy experiences that were good, story, workshops that I did, at with the Allender Center was a really powerful experience for me. Um, you know, just the opportunity to reflect on various moments in my life and having people reflect back to me what they see and what they experience as I share about it and write it down. That was just so validating and painful to be so vulnerable and to show up to that and know, like, okay, people know me and they know deep dark parts of me and they're still here, you know.
Mm.
That was a very healing part of my journey and in writing and in this work of story kind of recovery.
Yeah. Why is it so hard, do you think, for us to share it all on the page when maybe we even know nobody's going to read this, but it's still, there's something tender there. What
Mhm.
is that?
Well, I think it starts with us. I think we're probably the most afraid for ourselves to see something um honest within ourselves. I think we're really scared of what we might admit and what we might find about ourselves. Say you're writing, you know, um, say you're writing about this experience in your childhood. Doesn't even have to be anything like super intense.
Right.
It could just be about this time, you had a middle school breakup or something, but you still think about it because it would hurt your little heart, and you decide to just go there and write about it. And what you uncover is that it brought up a insecurity wound that has been kind of repeated over and over in your life. And you still feel it today. And maybe there's this fear of, admitting wounds, admitting places we haven't moved beyond. Um, yeah, I think it starts with us. I think and then from there, I do think we worry about how people might perceive the way we share something or the stories we share. And I
Uh-huh.
like to tell folks all the time, we can't predict, what people will think when they read our work. Um, but and they will project onto our pages, and we'll project onto their pages. It's just what we do because we're living beings and we want to see ourselves out there. And some of those projections are good and some of them are bad. But I think there needs to be a confidence in ourselves and our stories, um, that allow us to be able to show up with honesty before we present them to others. And that's an ongoing practice, but but it starts with ourselves, truly.
Yeah. I love that you said, yeah, it really starts with us.
Mhm.
And I think along with that, I'm assuming that there have been different phases in your own journey of like when to share certain stories.
Mm.
Um, and so I guess I'm just kind of curious about that process. Have you just kind of known like now is the right time to share this? Or what's kind of the discernment there? Because I feel like at least for me, it it's probably going to be a series and a process, and it's not going to be all at once.
As it should be. I don't think it should be all at once. That probably would be really intense and, a lot to hold
Yeah.
for you, to put that
Yeah.
out there. Um, I think in terms of what we decide to share and when and how, I think that depends on our relationship with the story itself and where we're at with it. Um, I always like to describe, like, when we're writing something, if we're feeling really scared of releasing it or even writing it, to give ourselves some distance and space between us and that story. So it can be comparable, like if we're writing something but still we haven't been processed through it, it will seem like it's like right here in our face. And you can't focus on it because it's too close. Like you can't even make out the words or the visual. But if you take some steps away and create distance, you can see clearly. And so the same thing happens when we create that space between us and a story or an experience. We create that room to be able to see clearly. So that's what I would say in terms of discernment of, are you able to see clearly with this? Has there been enough time for you to process and reflect on this, to give yourself that spaciousness? And for some, that might be a week. For some, it might be 6 months, a year, and for others, it might be 20 years or a decade, right? and only we can know that when we start showing up to it. But having that time, and I think just listening to of what feels. I mean, there's this big, great question by Mary Carr. She asked in The Art of Memoir. She says, "What would you write if you weren't afraid? What would you write if you weren't
Mm.
afraid?" And I love this question so much. And so one place that discernment could start is there is, you have a limited amount of time on on this earth. What is the thing that you would love to write? If there's only one thing you could write, what would it be? And then you write that thing. And then the next thing is, what is the thing I could write? Get to write another. And you just keep going with that. Follow it, and see where it takes you.
So I know you just wrote a book, but it kind of makes me want to ask you, what's the next thing that you would want to write?
That's a good
Or what?
question. Yeah. I actually keep going back to it, and I think one of the things that's really easy for us to do is, like, go into the should space, so this is what I should do.
Yeah,
Um,
so
and so I
easy.
have a lot of shoulds, and be honest, I'm getting them a little muddied between, like, what I want to. I mean, this book that I just wrote is the thing that I've been wanting to write forever, and
Mm,
so this feels really exciting because I'm like, "Okay,
yeah.
I did that." But the next thing, I feel like I don't know, I'm torn. I feel like it could either be, this memoir piece around, about this train trip that I did, when I was younger in a time of trying to, like, find myself and process a lot of trauma that I was going through at the time, and so I took this Amtrak and traveled all over looking for something that was within me, and so that is a thought, a thing I've been working on for some time, and then the other would be and kind of extension of this work, speaking more to the body, um, as that storyteller and really breaking down the details of how we might dig into that dear body experience of writing. Um, yeah, so, eh, there's so many
I
different places. I could tell you a million other topics too, but I'm not gonna.
My vote
So
is that
many.
you write them all.
Okay, perfect, great. This is great. It really helps me narrow it down. It's wonderful. Love it, love it.
I know, I'm here to
That's
help.
so yeah,
But
thanks.
I I love, just kind of witnessing the process, and so kind of part of
Mhm,
the reason for that question is I think there's a lot of podcasts that I feel like we talk about things looking backwards, like, oh, I did this. And so it's kind of nice to hear,
mm,
like, what are you working with now? And,
mm,
what are you kind of wrestling with? And those stories also just both resonate. I love the soul searching where I can like picture you traveling and kind of looking for that. And that there's kind of a little bit of my story too. And I did a
mm,
lot of traveling during the pandemic and
mm.
Airbnb-ing my life all over. And,
Ooh, yeah,
it led to some really beautiful things, but you uncover some really interesting things along the way. And so
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
wondering for the woman listening to this who maybe she is trying to process her own trauma, but doesn't really know where to start. What would you just like, give her as maybe start here?
Mm. Oh, well, first off, I would say, wow, I'm so proud of you for even daring to go to that place and for listening to yourself, and to that invitation within you that's wanting something deeper. I would commend her for that kind of bravery, even of being open to it. Then I would say, um, I would invite her to the page. I would invite her to brave the page. To one, this book I think would be a great place to start. It's not like trying to be a big pitch. It's just truly a really invitational read around digging into your life, and thinking about the ways, your upbringing informed you, your body has transformed you, ways that fear has played a role. There's so much there to dive into and explore. So I would prompt her in that. If that wasn't resonant, then I would encourage her to go check out the morning pages, The Artist's Way with Julia Cameron. Basically, creative work. The reason I prompt creative work as an entry for healing trauma is because it touches back to our inner child. It touches back to this younger self that existed before ego. We just show up and we're messy and we're imperfect, and we trust our creative process and truth to reveal itself to us, and we are able to kind of heal that younger version and all those ages, within us when we tap into the creative. So I would encourage her to go one of those places, or anything else that feels like a creative entry for her inner child, would be a good place to start.
I am grateful that you have put this book out there as a guide, as a tool. And I think it can just help serve so many. So I'm glad that we're able to have this conversation. And I'm always impressed with women like you who've been through so much and have chosen to use it as kind of a portal for other women
Well,
as well. And so thank you for, your creativity, yourself, and your bravery. Given your experience and just your journey, and I'm just curious, I want to know, what would you kind of like whisper to your younger self or a younger version of you who kind of first believed that her voice wasn't safe? What would you say to her now?
this whole book was written to her. My poetry book was written to her. I had this experience I write about in the book of, I think I was 11, or I was in middle school at some point, and I was going through a deep depression, and I really was in a place of harming myself and hurting, and I cried. I was breaking down, and in the midst of that, I had this vision, where I thought I saw an angel, and in the living room where I was sitting, and I drew a picture of her in my little journal and sketched her, and I thought I heard her say, "You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay, Megan. Like you're gonna get through this. You have something to offer the world. Like just keep going." And I just cried, cried, I cried. I totally forgot about this, and then it was years later, I came across my journals, and I came across that, and I remembered it. And when I looked at the picture, I realized it looked just like me, but as an older person, like today as an adult. And I was like, you know what? Like, what if, we can travel back and see ourselves and advocate for ourselves? And so that older version of me showed up to her, that little Megan, and said, you're going to be okay. You got this. Just keep going. You're going to make a difference someday. And so I think she already said it really. And it
Yeah.
saved me, it did, and, I think our older selves has the opportunity to save our younger self all the time and keep saving us over and over again, if we just listen for the compassion and care that's in us. That's why it's important for us to be so kind to ourselves and compassionate and understanding towards our journey, our process, and what we've been going through, So it's, if you're struggling with self-hate or self-doubt or all these kind of things, work that place of compassion and empathy. You never know how it might reach you and speak to the various ages in you and how it might heal you in the future, in the past, present, you know?
Mm, that was such a beautiful reflection. And gosh, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that. And how amazing that you had that experience at such a younger age, and the power of writing that it kind of allowed you the chance to relive it and
Mhm.
remember that and hold on to that.
Mhm. Mm.
Um, yeah,
Well,
thank you.
thank you for asking.
Yeah. I have a tradition on this podcast where I ask the guest who I'm chatting with to leave a quote or reflection or just something that they want to share with the next guest, not knowing who it is. So I'd like to share the message that was left for you and then give you the opportunity to do the same.
Yay!
Yeah. Oh, gosh, this is such a good quote for this conversation. My last guest shared, "You can't play small and take up space at the same time." And I love that. I also she added some, context to that she said, I think we often play small so much in life, and, we don't really know that we're doing it. And then we kind of wonder why things are the way that they are. And it's because we're making ourselves small. And so I feel like your work is inviting us all to open up and not play small. And so that just kind of just feels like it goes perfectly with this conversation.
That's really cool because my horoscope today basically, like, said, you know, like, "Stop playing small." Like, it basically said that. It's like, dare yourself to step into your bigness, your fullness, stand in your gifts, your talents, your skills, let yourself be seen in there without, apology. So it's so on point. I'm like,
Wow.
"Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay."
that's kind of eerie
Yeah, right? I'm like,
in a cool way.
"Yeah, it's pretty cool." I'll have to take a picture and send it to you.
Ye
It's kinda strange.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, that's so funny.
I love
Well,
that.
tell her thank you for me. I appreciate that.
Yes, I will. Um, and I'd love to hear, if anything's coming up for you that you want to share for the next guest, not knowing who it is.
Yeah, right when you asked, I immediately wanted to share this quote from the book about being a truth teller. And so what I'd say to them is like the importance of owning your truth, trusting your voice. So I want to read this about what a truth teller is, and hopefully it'll speak to them. It says a truth teller is a healer, a rebel, a disruptor, and a catalyst for change. A truth teller shakes us to our core, makes us honest, confronts our demons, and validates our desire. A truth teller is a spiritual guide, an artist, and a word warrior. A truth teller is a sword that divides us and a healing balm that unites us. A truth teller is wild and dangerous and the liberator we need. A truth teller is not an identity we arrive at, but a choice we make every single day when we advocate for our own voices. So speak your truth, feel the fear, and be the truth teller you long to be because you are worthy of it.
That is powerful. And it came back to that word choice. It's not an
Uh-huh.
identity
Yep.
we arrive at, but a choice that we choose or something like that. I was trying to
Every
hold
single
on to
day.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
hmm
so beautiful.
Yep.
Wow, so profound. Selfishly, I get so much out of asking that question to everybody because I get
Good.
to hear all of the reflections and the quotes. So
Yes. Good.
I'm just
Good.
soaking that in. And yeah, thank you
Mhm.
for sharing that. Thank you for being here today. This has been just so moving for me. And I feel like it's just really resonated. And I just know that the listeners are going to get so much out of this too. And I think thank you again just for your own bravery, like I said earlier. And of course, for your time today. I know you are a mom and you have so much happening. So it's not lost on me that you chose to be here today. And it really means the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. It's wonderful to spend time with you, and thank you for everybody listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into the show today. And before you go, I just have one quick favor to ask of you. There is a really simple way that you can help support me and help support this show, and that is to hit that follow button on whatever app you're listening to the show on. I'm trying really hard to level up the content and deliver unique value and amazing guests, and just hitting that follow button is the magic that will help continue to empower that. And remember that the world deserves to hear your voice and your stories, and you deserve a place at the top.